What if I told you that your most natural reaction in conflict, the urge to explain yourself, is precisely the behavior that guarantees your defeat? Imagine that for a moment. The instinct you trust most may be the very thing that strips you of authority, leaving you exposed. Today we will dissect why defending yourself is not a sign of strength but an admission of weakness, and how mastering silence and composure can invert power in any situation. Throughout history, power has rarely belonged to the person who speaks first, justifies, or rushes to clarify. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something profound: human beings interpret not the truth itself, but the way truth is presented. Perception becomes reality, and in the realm of perception, silence often speaks louder than words. The act of self-defense, though seemingly reasonable, carries with it a subtle yet devastating message. It tells the world that the accusation has weight. By defending, you validate the frame imposed upon you by your adversary, and in doing so, you enter their battlefield under their rules. From a psychological standpoint, this aligns with the concept of cognitive framing. When someone accuses you of arrogance, dishonesty, or selfishness, they are not only attacking your character, but also offering a lens through which the audience will interpret your response. If you immediately defend yourself, you confirm the frame. You have acknowledged their authority to define the terms of the conversation. This is why Machiavelli warned that the man who defends himself lowers his own status, while the one who does not forces the world to defend him. Think about the dynamics of a professional meeting. Imagine you are presenting a strategy and a colleague undermines you publicly with a dismissive remark, "I'm not sure this plan is well thought out." The instinctive reaction would be to counter with evidence to demonstrate your preparation. But what occurs in that moment? You lean forward. Your tone sharpens your body, signals agitation. The audience now sees you on the defensive, striving for validation. Even if your facts are correct, the psychological power has shifted. You are reacting, they are leading. Contrast this with the Machiavellian approach. You lean back, you pause, perhaps allow a faint smile. You say little or nothing. Instead of defending, you redirect. "I'd be interested in hearing how you would approach it." Suddenly the burden shifts. The aggressor must elaborate, justify, expose the gaps in their thinking. The room is no longer watching you scramble for credibility. It is watching them struggle to maintain composure under pressure. This is not mere silence. It is strategic silence, a silence designed to invert power. Behavioral psychology supports this principle. Silence creates discomfort because human beings are conditioned to expect immediate feedback in social exchanges. When that feedback is withheld, the accuser is left with uncertainty, forced to question their own words. Over time, they begin to appear emotional, unstable, or obsessive, while you remain calm, untouchable. This is the pivot point where control over the narrative shifts entirely. Machiavelli was not advocating passivity. He was revealing that power lies not in being understood, but in being unassailable. To seek constant understanding is an emotional weakness. To command silence and ambiguity is a strategic strength. Once you understand that defending yourself concedes authority, the next question arises: what replaces defense? The answer lies in 3 tools of psychological strategy: silence, reframing, and precision strikes. Each of these methods has been used throughout history by leaders, negotiators, and strategists who recognize that emotional control is more valuable than factual correctness. First, silence. This is not a passive absence of words, but an active presence of composure. Silence creates ambiguity, and ambiguity compels others to interpret. In social psychology, ambiguity bias reveals that people often project strength onto those they cannot easily read. When an accusation lingers unanswered, it unsettles the aggressor while elevating the accused. Observers begin to fill the gap with assumptions of resilience, self-control, or hidden knowledge. In this way, silence transforms from emptiness into a stage on which others perform their insecurities. Second, reframing. Instead of entering the accuser's framework, the Machiavellian strategist subtly redirects the narrative. Imagine being called manipulative. A defensive individual insists, "I'm not manipulative, you misunderstood." But the strategist calmly responds. It's interesting how influence unsettles some people. The attack is not countered directly, but reframed as the other person's insecurity. This is not defense, it is inversion. The accusation becomes a mirror reflecting the accuser's state of mind. In communication theory, this is known as frame control, where the party that defines the frame dominates the interaction. Third, precision strikes. These are concise statements that neither explain nor justify, but slice through the tension with clarity. When someone calls you arrogant, you respond. Confidence often looks like arrogance to the insecure. When labeled false, you respond, "Authenticity is not something I owe to anyone." These remarks do not ask for validation. They assert status. They close the door rather than open debate. From a behavioral perspective, such statements exploit the principle of scarcity. Your words carry weight precisely because they are few and deliberate. Consider how these tools play out in personal relationships. A partner might say, "You don't care about me anymore." The common reaction is panic followed by reassurance and lengthy explanations. Yet Machiavellian strategy would suggest pausing, allowing the weight of the words to linger, and then offering a calm, firm response. That's not how I see it. No defense, no pleading, no emotional unraveling. The simplicity of the statement shifts the emotional rhythm. The accuser begins to doubt their own tone, questioning whether they overreacted. You have taken control, not by raising your voice, but by holding your ground with measured composure. This dynamic is particularly potent in group settings where audiences amplify perception. In a boardroom, at a family gathering, or on a public platform, the crowd does not evaluate arguments as carefully as one might think. Instead, they respond to confidence signals. The person who maintains calm under fire, who refuses to appear rattled, captures the perception of authority. The one who scrambles to explain appears subordinate regardless of the truth of their words. Power, then, is not a contest of facts, but of frames. It is not about winning the argument, but about refusing to enter it on terms that diminish you. The strategic individual understands that silence, reframing, and precise assertion are not mere tactics, they are the architecture of authority. To grasp why these strategies work so effectively, we must look deeper into human psychology. At the heart of every confrontation lies an unspoken competition for narrative control. People are less concerned with objective truth than with social positioning. In other words, they want to know who commands the room, who dictates the rhythm of interaction, and who appears unshaken. This explains why silence, composure, and reframing carry disproportionate influence. They communicate dominance not through force, but through psychological asymmetry. One of Machiavelli's most timeless observations was that perception shapes reality more than reason. When you explain yourself, you implicitly accept that others have the authority to judge you. The moment you enter that arena, you are already disadvantaged. Conversely, when you withhold explanation, you deny your adversary the validation they seek. The accuser becomes louder, more desperate, more emotional. And in the eyes of observers, they begin to look unstable. This is not coincidence, it is a predictable pattern rooted in what psychologists call projection and escalation. Projection occurs when individuals accuse others of qualities they fear within themselves. A colleague calling you manipulative may in fact be struggling with their own manipulative tendencies. By refusing to defend yourself, you allow their projection to stand exposed. Escalation follows because people who fail to provoke a reaction often intensify their efforts, inadvertently revealing even more about their insecurities. In both cases, your restraint creates the conditions for your opponent's self-destruction. History offers countless examples. Consider political debates. The candidate who reacts angrily to attacks, scrambling to clarify their record, often appears weaker than the one who remains calm and shifts focus. Audiences rarely remember the details of policy rebuttals, but they vividly remember composure, confidence, and the aura of control. Or take the corporate world, where CEOs under fire for controversial decisions sometimes make matters worse by offering endless explanations. The leaders who maintain brevity, who refuse to appear rattled, often preserve their authority despite controversy. This does not mean that truth is irrelevant. It means that truth alone is insufficient without control of its presentation. Humans are wired to look for cues of strength and stability. A composed silence communicates both. That is why Machiavelli insisted that the man who refuses to defend himself appears elevated, as if standing above the fray. He is not dragged into petty disputes. Instead, he exudes a kind of immunity that others cannot penetrate. We can also analyze this through the lens of group psychology. In any collective, whether a team, a family, or a society, people instinctively align with the figure who seems least affected by turmoil. The one who does not flinch under attack becomes the anchor of stability. In contrast, the person defending, clarifying, or pleading becomes associated with instability. This is why silence and reframing do not merely neutralize attacks. They convert them into fuel for authority. Machiavelli's insight was not cynical, but realistic. He recognized that humans respect strength more than sincerity. To seek approval is to reveal dependence. To embody composure is to command loyalty even from those who once doubted you. Inverting power is not about crushing opposition directly. It is about creating a space where your opponents unravel themselves while you remain untouchable. To apply these principles effectively, we must recognize that not all silence is equal. There is weak silence, born from fear, and strong silence, born from choice. Weak silence appears hesitant, defensive, or uncertain. It communicates withdrawal, and observers sense vulnerability. Strong silence, by contrast, radiates presence. It is deliberate, accompanied by body language that conveys control, steady eye contact, relaxed posture, and measured stillness. This form of silence unsettles opponents, not because it says nothing, but because it implies everything. It creates the suspicion that you know more, that you are unshaken, that you occupy higher ground. In practice, cultivating strong silence requires mastery of emotional regulation. Research in behavioral psychology confirms that those who manage physiological stress, slowing their breath, steadying their gestures, controlling micro-expressions, project authority even under pressure. It is not the absence of emotion, but the discipline to conceal and channel emotion strategically. Machiavelli would argue that this discipline is the foundation of political survival. Modern psychology would call it emotional intelligence under duress. Consider the professional arena again. When undermined in a meeting, the typical manager rushes to defend their strategy. But the strategist pauses, lets the silence expand, and then redirects the spotlight. Why don't you elaborate on your perspective? This not only neutralizes the attack, it forces the aggressor into the uncomfortable role of proving themselves. The more they speak, the more they reveal their biases, limitations, and insecurities. What began as their attempt to destabilize you ends as their own exposure. Personal relationships offer similar opportunities. When accused of being cold or distant, the instinct is to explain, to reassure. But reassurance is often interpreted as admission. A measured response such as, "That's not how I see it," maintains dignity without conceding control. Over time, this rhythm resets the dynamic of the relationship. The accuser becomes more cautious, aware that emotional exaggeration no longer provokes the reaction it once did. You have shifted the power balance not through aggression, but through consistency. The digital environment intensifies this effect. Online platforms amplify accusations, criticism, and attacks. The temptation to defend oneself is even stronger when an audience is watching. Yet silence or strategic redirection can prove more powerful than any lengthy rebuttal. Responding with brevity. People often call you dangerous when they cannot control you, not only avoids self-defense but reframes the criticism as evidence of influence. Audiences, consciously or not, interpret such remarks as signals of strength. This is the essence of Machiavellian inversion. Your opponents expect resistance, and when they encounter none, they lose their script. Deprived of the battle they anticipated, they escalate, revealing their weakness. The more they overextend, the stronger you appear. Over time, a reputation forms not of innocence, but of invulnerability. And reputation, Machiavelli reminds us, is the currency of power. A good reputation invites affection, but a strong reputation commands caution. Ultimately, the lesson is clear. Do not trade authority for the fleeting comfort of being understood. Authority is not maintained by defending your image, but by controlling the narrative environment in which your image is judged. Silence, reframing, and brevity are not evasions. They are weapons. They elevate you from participant to arbiter, from defendant to strategist. The final stage of this Machiavellian framework is not merely silence, but the cultivation of aura. Silence can protect you in the moment, but aura sustains you over time. Aura is the intangible presence that precedes you into a room and lingers after you leave. It is the product of consistent restraint, deliberate responses, and the refusal to be dragged into petty disputes. Over weeks, months, and years, this consistency hardens into reputation, a shield far stronger than any individual defense. Aura operates on the psychology of uncertainty. When people cannot predict your reactions, they elevate their assumptions. They imagine you know more, that you are capable of more, that you may strike in ways they cannot anticipate. This unpredictability generates caution, and caution, when directed toward you, is indistinguishable from respect. Machiavelli would argue that it is better to be feared than loved, but in truth, the greater power lies in being unreadable. The feared man may be resisted. The unreadable man is avoided. The path to such presence demands practice. It means allowing insults to pass without correction, choosing brevity over elaboration, and anchoring yourself in stillness when others lose composure. It means understanding that your reputation does not need to be good. It needs to be strong. A good reputation invites expectation. A strong one enforces boundaries. When others defend you unprompted, when audiences question the motives of your accusers without you lifting a finger, you have reached the point where power has inverted. This is the paradox at the core of Machiavelli's insight. By refusing to fight for approval, you gain authority. By declining to justify, you magnify your presence. And by embracing the discipline of composure, you transform from a person defending their image into a figure who defines the room. Power in its purest form is not argued. It is imposed through the quiet certainty that you do not need to explain yourself.